Author's Intent by Kaine Walker. Arthur Conan Doyle was a writer of multiple genres, including fantasy and science fiction, but he became most recognized for his work in true crime specifically. Much of his inspiration for his tales came from his adventures as a wartime physician, and with pride, at age 21, he stated that he came of age at 80 degrees north latitude. Conan Doyle served as a doctor aboard a whaling ship and volunteered again in the South African Boer War, giving him a view of fascinating parts of the world before he returned home to settle into medical practice. His writings about the war earned him English knighthood in 1902, granting him the title of Sir. Along with being renowned by his schoolmates in his journey to becoming a great storyteller, Sir Doyle met many like him in his travels. He loved the stories of Sir Walter Scott, Edgar Allan Poe, and Bret Harte, who strongly influenced his work. He'd also met an explorer named Percy Fawcett, who later became his friend, and a professor of physiology named William Rutherford, who had lectured at Edinburgh while Doyle studied medicine there. Also, while at university, he added his middle name, Conan, to his surname. Later, he became acquainted with James M. Barrie and Robert Louis Stevenson, who were known respectively for the works of Peter Pan and Treasure Island. Mentor, Dr. Joseph Bell, demonstrated great skill of observation and objective deduction from the tiniest of details, while another lecturer, Sir Patrick Watson, was unrivaled in his surgery skills and warm humanity. They became Conan Doyle's inspiration for Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson. Sir Arthur's philosophy on life manifested in his travels and years of study. He believed life was much more about creating yourself than finding yourself, and that the act of living was far more daring than any act of imagination, since it required much more effort. Eventually, this brought him to contemplate the mystery of what lies beyond and set him on the path to following spiritualism as its most well-known and outspoken proponent. Public is told incorrectly that his belief in spiritualism sprang into being as a response to the death of his eldest son, Kingsley, in 1918. In fact, Conan Doyle's interest in the spirit realm took root some 30 years earlier, well before his son's birth. Occasionally, he would point to a letter that he published in 1887, issue of Light, the Journal of the London Spiritualistic Alliance, as evidence that his views had developed as the result of a lifetime of study. The subject of psychical research is one upon which I have thought more and been slower to form an opinion about than upon any other subject whatever, he declared. I have not been hasty in forming my opinion. In 1907, years after the passing of his first wife, Louisa Hawkins, Conan Doyle married Jean Lecky and became so happy that his writing output slowed. After his hiatus, he turned most of his writing focus to historical fiction, spiritualism, and other interests, until finally Conan Doyle would himself pass away in the year 1930 in Sussex, England. Notable works: Micah Clarke, 1889. The Captain of the Pole Star, 1890. The White Company, 1891. The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, 1892. Rodney Stone, 1896. The Exploits of Brigadier Gerard, 1896. The Hound of Baskervilles, 1902. Sir Nigel, 1906. And finally, The Lost World in 1912. Instructor's notes. Okay, dear viewers, now I'm going to explain the point of my Author's Intent series. The idea behind studying an author's philosophy is not only to gain inspiration for a creative method, but also to glean bits of wisdom from them, and if we're lucky, some may even pertain to life itself. Now I will read let's say, 3 quotes from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and give my thoughts on each, as well as highlight his beliefs further. 1. I consider that a man's brain originally is like a little empty attic, and you have to stock it with such furniture as you choose. I believe that this is related to his belief that the journey of life is more about creating yourself than finding yourself. You fill it with your beliefs, trinkets from your adventures, and mementos from the people in your life, and suddenly it's renovated. 2. To the man who loves art for its own sake, it is frequently in its least important and lowliest manifestations that the keenest pleasure is to be derived. I think he means that the love of art, or literature in this case, doesn't have to come from a complicated place, and this would match his temperament and the way he chose to face the world. 3. Our ideas must be as broad as nature if they are to interpret nature. This one here is definitely inspired by a sense of adventure, and again referring to his belief that the act of living was more daring than imagination. And I think he thought getting out and experiencing life was one of the keys to having a broad imagination, but that's just a theory. And I did a little bit of scanning of his quote list, and I'm gonna go ahead and break my own rule here. I said I would read 3, but I really wanted to share this because I think this speaks to the spirit of his motivations behind his work the most. Here goes. Nothing clears up a case so much as stating it to another person. You see, Sir Doyle often found inspiration for characters, his philosophy, and his practice from his friends and colleagues. It's where he got his inspiration for Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson. He also got inspiration for, what's his name? He was an adventurer that he wrote about. Professor Challenger, that was his name. And I think this is one of the best skills we can take from him, because 2 brains are always better than 1. You'll never know where you find your inspiration. And what might help us as writers and creators is finding kindred spirits, or at least people who exhibit some insight that we may want to get from them in order to improve our own work. I think we can all agree that wouldn't hurt to have more of. And with that, I think it's time to sign off. If you guys would like to know more about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and his legacy, links will be down in the description. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. This has been your gracious host, Kaine Walker, and I'll see you again soon. Peace.